The lost child in the snow. The winter evening had arrived early, casting long shadows across the snow-covered forest road. Sarah Mitchell stood beside her car, her breath forming small clouds in the freezing air. She had pulled over to take an important phone call from her office in Manhattan, where she served as CEO of a growing tech company. The pine trees surrounding her were heavy with fresh snow, and the world felt unusually quiet. Sarah had been driving for nearly 3 hours, heading to a remote cabin she had rented for the weekend. The pressures of running a company had been weighing on her lately, and she desperately needed time away from conference rooms and endless email chains. The cabin promised solitude, a crackling fireplace, and a chance to remember who she was beyond her job title. As she finished her call and prepared to get back into her warm car, something caught her attention. A small figure was moving slowly through the trees, barely visible in the fading light. Sarah squinted, trying to make sense of what she was seeing. The figure seemed to stumble, then continue forward with uncertain steps. Sarah's heart began to beat faster. She tucked her phone into her coat pocket and took a few steps toward the tree line. The figure emerged more clearly now, and Sarah felt her breath catch in her throat. It was a little girl, no more than 4 or 5 years old, wearing a red dress that seemed far too thin for the freezing temperature. The child's blonde hair was pulled into small pigtails, and her face was flushed pink from the cold. The little girl looked up and saw Sarah standing by the cat. Her blue eyes were wide and frightened, and tears had left tracks down her cheeks. She walked toward Sarah with small, hesitant steps, her little hands trembling. "Ma'am," the child said in a voice that wavered and broke, "I can't find my daddy." Sarah immediately knelt down in the snow, bringing herself to the child's eye level. Her expensive wool coat pressed into the cold ground, but she didn't notice. All of her attention was focused on this frightened little girl who had appeared from nowhere. "It's okay, sweetheart," Sarah said gently, trying to keep her own voice calm despite the alarm bells ringing in her head. "You're safe now." "What's your name?" "Emma," the little girl whispered, wrapping her arms around herself. "We were walking in the woods, and I saw a deer. I followed it, and then I couldn't find my daddy anymore." Sarah quickly removed her own scarf and wrapped it around Emma's shoulders. The child was shivering violently, and Sarah knew they needed to find her father quickly. Hypothermia was a real danger in these temperatures, especially for a child dressed so inadequately for the weather. "Emma, that's a beautiful name," Sarah said, rubbing the child's arms to generate warmth. "Can you show me which way you came from? We're going to find your daddy right now." Emma turned and pointed toward the dense forest behind her. Sarah looked at the darkening woods and made a quick decision. She opened her car door and grabbed a flashlight from the glove compartment, then took Emma's small hand in hers. "Let's go find him together," Sarah said with a confidence she didn't entirely feel. They entered the forest, Sarah's flashlight cutting through the gathering darkness. Emma held tightly to Sarah's hand, occasionally pointing in different directions as she tried to remember the path she had taken. Sarah called out repeatedly, her voice echoing through the trees. "Hello. We have your daughter. Can you hear me?" The forest seemed to swallow her words, giving nothing back but silence and the soft sound of snow falling from branches. They walked deeper into the woods, Sarah growing more concerned with each passing minute. She pulled out her phone, but there was no signal this far from the main road. After what felt like an eternity but was probably only 15 minutes, Sarah heard something. A distant voice, hoarse and desperate, calling a name. "Emma. Emma, where are you?" "Daddy." Emma cried out, her voice suddenly full of hope. "We're here." Sarah shouted, directing her flashlight toward the sound of the voice. "Follow the light." Moments later, a man appeared through the trees, running and stumbling through the snow. He was in his early 30s, wearing a heavy jacket and hiking boots. His face was streaked with tears and his expression showed pure panic that transformed into overwhelming relief when he saw his daughter. "Emma," he gasped, dropping to his knees as the little girl ran into his arms. The man held his daughter tightly, his whole body shaking with sobs. Sarah stood back, giving them their moment, but keeping her flashlight steady so they could see. After a long minute, the man looked up at Sarah, his eyes red but filled with gratitude. "Thank you," he said, his voice breaking. "Thank you so much. I thought I'd lost her. We were taking photographs for my wife's birthday surprise, and she just vanished. I've been searching for half an hour." He thought. He couldn't finish the sentence. It didn't need to. Sarah understood perfectly well what he had thought, what any parent would think in that situation. "She's safe," Sarah said simply. "That's what matters. But we should get her somewhere warm. My car is just about 15 minutes back. Do you have a vehicle nearby?" The man nodded, standing up with Emma secure in his arms. "Yes, I'm parked just off the main road, probably close to where you are." He carried her in because she wanted to see the forest. "I'm James, by the way. James Cooper." "Sarah Mitchell," she replied, already turning to lead them back the way she had come. As they walked through the darkening forest, James told Sarah about his wife, who was at home waiting for them, unaware of what had happened. He explained how they had moved to the area 6 months ago, seeking a quieter life away from the city. Emma, now warm in her father's arms and wrapped in Sarah's scarf, had already recovered her spirits and was chattering about the deer she had seen. When they emerged from the forest and saw both vehicles parked along the road, James sat Emma down carefully and turned to Sarah. His eyes were still red, but his expression was earnest and deeply grateful. "I don't know how to thank you," he said. "If you hadn't been here, if you hadn't helped her. I can't even think about it." Sarah smiled, a genuine warmth spreading through her chest that had nothing to do with getting back to her heated cat. "I'm just glad I was in the right place at the right time." As she drove away a few minutes later, continuing toward her cabin, Sarah realized something had shifted inside her. She had left the city seeking solitude and escape from responsibility. Instead, she had been reminded that sometimes the most important thing you can do is simply be present when someone needs help. The cabin would still be waiting. The solitude would still be there. But now it would feel different, less like an escape and more like a place to reflect on what truly mattered. Through her rearview mirror, she could see James's car lights in the distance, heading safely home. Sarah smiled to herself and drove on through the snowy evening, the forest dark and peaceful around her.